You mind for a minute?
Yeah, mine, yeah. I definitely have something right now.
How's that? Testing 1, 2. Testing. Testing, test.
Some feedback.
Mic check, 1, 2, mic check, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, because your PA system sounds so good. It's you can see the C4.
Testing, test 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing well also.
Good. Good.
I'm not hearing the mics. What am I hearing?
So I'm going to point you towards the board area, and then they have a big television.
Okay.
So we're just using the camera and the laptop.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, same here. Pretty low tech.
Hey, Charles, I think you might be probably another 15-20 minutes until the front thing to end
Okay.
on the agenda, if that's all right.
Yeah.
That's fine, yeah.
Okay.
But you're all queued up and ready to go.
Sounds good.
All right.
Oh, and question, some people had wanted me to record this. Are you okay if I record, not this part, but when I'm actually talking?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
And we're recording most of it too.
All right, good. Sounds good.
Between the two of us, we should be good to go. Okay.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
These colleges are already being built. They should have been receiving cell services, and this is the back. This is, we'll get a copy of the neighborhood copy. But this will be for you to also keep it. I would put it in the Scott 5 in the building. Just my brother. They'll send us that information today. I'm glad that the ones got to be here. We got one Johnny Wilkins. His application. This was like, all right, he traveled. Remember, he's out. We don't have a test for them yet. That's just tournament. There's no action in the county. So we're gonna our goals. Sunflower good. Definitely 36. Yeah. Try to sneak within 7. That's yes. That invoice from me to and then
That little Mackie mixture.
Yeah, you see how
It's fluid around the top. So each one of these lines comes from a different.
It's also
But it's still up there without anything being flushed. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and then if I go to the lines, it shuts off completely. Which would make sense for the distorted. Mic check, 1, 2. 1, 2, mic check.
It's got an out mic. You're saying it's too hot for your mic level and not hot enough for your language.
isn't those mics, it's like another mic in the room is up.
Definitely do that.
It'll also pick up the electric mic.
Maybe it's just what it is, maybe just like a weird combination.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing. Test. Test.
I hear this, but the static is actually also the PA.
It's like I got them over here. Check all these lines.
I think it's something on the mixer.
Excuse me?
I think it's something on the mixers.
All these Saturdays, we're all I go to my brother, we do a side in there, and then we're all in. Game is 12:30. We're like, I think it was like 1:30. Woke up at 7. I was sitting there. I took off. I worked Monday. I took off. So, that's a good game. It's probably the most competitive playoff game we've been here. Maybe outside of the Ohio State house.
So I know it didn't affect us this year. It's a healthy year, but I think
We'll see. No, I appreciate the help. Thank you. Before that, safety, you're shut. He's kind of his ball so nice.
and we haven't had
They were looking at it for you.
but that's how they don't talk about the invoice. We got one.
They were really impressive. Yeah.
Billions of dollars. Also, this is my own personal event, so it's not just with anything.
John Atkins' son, he just bought the production. Oh, yeah? He worked at church. Well, we get paid bucks. Sure. But we go.
If it is available.
Yeah. I didn't use it, but we have people around here. That would be amazing. It could be tough. There's so many lessons that have to get to the change of the standards, create projects, project-based learning. They should open it up. They should giveaway. You have some. Yeah. Like they should talk about the fish that field.
Meanwhile, when O'Leary emails me because she's playing a thing, I'm like, I got no money.
Well, it's weird. I don't know how it works. No, the other day.
maybe some of your bridge stars.
Unless you want to come up here.
One of the things that in my long-term list of things to do, when I feel like if they pay me, what I need to do is I need a little amp, free, isolated, transformer isolated outputs. I've got two coming out of that.
I saw her email. I asked her. I listened to her. And I was thinking, oh, she was like, that is non not making any
Those look great.
That's why they plug it in there. It's practical speaks. But I can't figure that out.
But I mean, she makes it this way. There, I don't think it's something.
Or no. XLR. Yes.
Oh yeah,
That's not right.
We gotta work on that.
I was 28.
But it does get complicated.
I can't figure this out. These bikes.
What I need is a little box.
I was wondering about that last time. It was like they have an executive session first.
For a buffer and isolation.
Oh, okay. I bet you could take Letting you know I got 4 posts already loaded up for this meeting, so in case you keep track of talent, I got you at least on par for today. Look, I'm just trying to get a day. I want one day between now and June. And I win.
Today was a smooth day. I took it easy.
I know. That's why when I made the resolution, it was a hard conversation I had to have with myself. It's like, look, maybe some days when I can't do this.
Maybe it's like people take
Nobody said it won't take this time. That's all I said.
Brother Mike,
pick up the flag with
just I'll just stay out of the way.
What would I do? I really would. Try to tuck my stuff away. Thank you. Okay, great. You know what? I always forget everything that comes. I always forget it here. And then what happens is the stuff like this that I have to do, it stays here too. So I'm just gonna be reminded. I'm
just gonna take it home and fill it out tonight and just drop it off tomorrow before it gets lost in my life.
Hey. How's it going? I'll look at the bathroom.
I'm not good enough to put it again. We're gonna work on that later on in life.
Yeah, it is beginning. That's my
I gotta get one. I just want people to see me dancing. That's all.
Give you bigger snacks this time.
You only gave me one of the one that I really like.
Kit Kat.
Yep.
Kit Kat.
Well, I don't like these. Thank you. I'm like, this looks like my garbage from last night.
Face.
You know everything. You ready?
Sure would. I know. Running like a lady.
Just so Bigliotti, you're still contract with Bigliotti. Have you turned over Buell Road line yet, or is that still? Weren't you going to turn it over to Alcatraz at some point? Well, not yet. We still got a pump station. Okay. 2 years? What, 8 years? Yeah. Yeah.
It's called the Heinz Fellowship. It's a program in high school. It's a new program.
Okay. And we're doing another presentation?
Yes.
Okay. All right. You ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone. The hour of 7 p.m. having arrived and passed. Apologies for our tardiness. I call to order this agenda-setting meeting for the Woodland Hills School Board for the month of January 2020. Mr. Gigliotti, will you call the roll?
Mr. Graves? Present. Ms. Ellickson?
Present.
Ms. Lawson?
Present.
Ms. Curry?
Here.
Mr. Oswald?
Here.
Mr. Belmont?
Here.
Ms. Glasser?
Present.
Ms. Scott?
Present.
Ms. Hodge?
Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Acknowledge that we have a student who was in a vehicle accident last night as a result of some senseless activity in McKeesport following the basketball game, and send our thoughts and prayers to the family as she recovers in the hospital this evening. Okay. Next week we will accept the minutes for the December reorganization and legislative meetings. Please review those. If there's any notes or corrections at this time, we'll note those. Okay, seeing none. The board met in executive session immediately prior to this meeting and on December 17th by phone conference to discuss legal personnel, school security matters. Mr. Harris, are there any announcements?
Yes, I have 2. Okay, it's time of the year again for kindergarten registration. We've bumped up registration this year to be a little more open and aggressive with our kindergarten enrollments. So on Tuesday, January 14th, we were having registration from 12 to 7 p.m. at Edgewood. Wednesday, January 15th at Turtle Creek, 12 to 7 p.m., and Thursday at Wilkins, 12 to 7 p.m. Please make sure you bring your child because various screenings will be done. If you have any questions, please call 412-731-1300, extension 0110. Next one, Woodland Hills Junior Musical, The Little Mermaid. Get your tickets now. You can get your tickets at the door at the high school Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The Thursday time showing is 7:30. Friday is at 7:30. Saturday, there are two showings, 2 p.m. and 7:30. That's The Little Mermaid playing at the high school.
That's next week.
Next week.
Next week. Yep.
January 16th, 17th, and 18th.
There we go. Okay. Any other announcements?
Yes, I just want to let the public know that at the Finance Committees, beginning this month on January 22nd, which is, we normally hold them on the fourth Wednesday of the month at 5, with all the other committees on that night. Through May, we have Finance Committee meetings, and the budget will be discussed at each of those meetings. If anyone wishes to attend, it is open to the public.
Thank you. Anyone else have announcements? Okay. Seeing none, we won't have student speakers this evening, but we do have several presentations, the first of which is Mr. McCaig regarding our recent bond sale. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam President. I have a handout which I'll circulate right now.
We can pass those around.
2 pages, one.
Okay. Thank you.
As those go around, again, I'm Mike McKay with RBC Capital Markets. It's good to see everybody, and for those who I have not met yet, so nice to meet you. Mr. Gigliotti thought that it would be a good idea for, since we've completed the plan of finance, to go over everything that we've done. The final piece of the bond issue was done, and will actually close tomorrow. So these numbers are now final, and we can walk through it. These two summary pages are here for your benefit. If anybody has any questions, we can certainly take a minute and answer those questions. But this is a full summary of what's been done from a financing perspective from the district, going back to 2017, when the district contemplated the financing of the two projects at Dixon and the high school. So the first page that looks like this, the columns, this is what you've seen every single time that I've been in front of you. This is the plan of finance that we decided, or that the board put in place, and it was a multi-year function. It basically started in 2017, and step by step, we've added to it, and then this is the final phase of it. It's probably easier, though, to look at the other handout that I put together, which has the graph on it. The summary is basically that the district wanted to finance these two projects and not have the debt service, in other words, the principal and interest, go beyond $6.2 million. The existing debt service of the district's debt was at $5.8 million when we got this started, and we were able to achieve that through a number of techniques and through the plan that we had started with, and a couple changes along the way. But you can see that back in 2018, the blue bar is the existing debt service. All the way to the far left of the graph, that's where the principal and interest payments were before we got this started. And then all the colors are everything that we've done all the way through the bond issue here that's going to close tomorrow in 2020. And so we've been able to finance $97 million in projects and only have an increase to the budget of $400,000. Now, obviously, the term is longer. The term of all the debt that started when we started this program went out to about 2025. Now it's a 30-year term, but the increase to the budget, we wanted to keep to $400,000, and we were able to keep that to $400,000. In addition to that, the last time I was in front of you, when you passed the last resolution back in October, we were anticipating that this number, this $97 million, was going to be around $94 million. So because of the fact that rates cooperated and we were a little conservative with our numbers, there's an additional $3 million that is available for capital projects above and beyond what we had talked about the last time I was here. So that was good news, and it didn't impact the payments. We're still at the $6.2 million going out to fiscal year 2050. The last thing I wanted to make a note of is that when you go to your budgeting period, you'll see that there are some funds that are sitting in different funds called either capitalized interest or budgeted surplus funds. And you might get excited if you see those sitting around, but those are monies that are set aside to make debt service payments, the principal and interest payments over the next several, maybe 4 or 5 years. And the reason being is when we got this process started, your principal and interest payments were above $6.2 million, and we needed to, for lack of a better term, get over the hump. And so that money was purposely set aside so that it levels off that $6.2 million, or levels off those payments so you stay at the $6.2 million. So that money is dedicated to making part of the payments so that the net of those, the net payments end up being what you see in the graph here. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions, and obviously I think we're all pretty thrilled with the end result, and this will probably be the last time you see me for a little while, so I want to make sure that that we're here to make and everybody understands exactly what we've done, and obviously to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. McKay?
Yeah, well,
Sure.
you were saying that there was several things happening in our favor for us to get an excess of $3 million without anything else changing. Can you specifically talk about what were those? Was it just that we had a favorable interest rate at the time in which we did that, or what was the mechanism for us to actually get more with the same payment?
We went to market for the last piece of this, which you authorized back at your October meeting. Mm-hmm. So we were conservative with our estimate of where interest rates were, because interest rates can be volatile toward the end of the year. Right. And we sold the bonds in the first week in December for closing here tomorrow. And really a couple things happened, one of which was the interest rates were lower than what we anticipated. That was really one of the bigger things. The second thing was the structure of the bonds. We didn't need to have as many premium bonds, and that allowed us to stay under the $6.2 million. So as a result, we were able to really get more money for the projects and stay under the target. So those were the two things. Interest rates were lower. We were conservative in our estimates, and the third thing was the premiums that we were anticipating that we didn't need to do.
And let's be clear, though. Even though we got this $97 million, right, we don't have to use it all. Because the whole intention of this was just to make sure we clear just what we need for our projects. We needed a little bit more money for the high school. But, just like you would advise any good consumer, because you're approved for this much doesn't mean you have to use it all. So say if we just if we're at the 94 million, I think is what we really needed, what are we going to do with the rest of this? Can we just, are we holding it, or we leave it back? I asked something like this last time. It just
Yes.
seems clear.
Yeah, there are other, you can, obviously you want to be judicious with your money. You can use it for other capital projects, which I've seen that you certainly do have other things that you could spend it for. And ultimately, if you choose to, you could use it to pay down on the debt if there's nothing else that needs to be spent down.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Very good. It's been my pleasure to work with the school district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. And the next presentation is Dr. Wolfgang on the Churchill Charter application. That's going to be a virtual presentation. He's in the middle of the state where they're having some weather. So I don't know if we need Mr. Meter to help us start with that. Ready to go? Okay. Good evening, sir. Thank you for being with us.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam President, Superintendent Harris, and the board. I appreciate your flexibility in allowing me to present this virtually. My daughters came home with a van today, and the van driver said she saw several cars going off the road, so I think I made the prudent choice of not driving out today. So I'm going to just briefly go over a little bit of background in gifted ed, and I'm going to share a PowerPoint, and then I'll certainly answer any questions that you might have at the end of it. And as I indicated in my email, if it's okay with all of you, I'm going to record this session as well.
Yes, please do. That way, in case it's not captured on our video recording, we'll have it as a backup.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, so the question is, why have a school for gifted learners? And that's what I'm hoping to be able to share a little bit more information about that this evening. Just to give you a little background on me, I was a teacher in the public school systems in Central PA here for 17 years. 15 of those years were spent teaching gifted ed, the middle school level, as well as being a gifted ed coordinator. And my current role is an assistant professor of gifted education at Millersville University, one of the 14 state system universities in the great state of Pennsylvania. So that's my background coming into this. So first off, one of the challenges we have in gifted education is trying to really define what giftedness is, and there are many different definitions. And this is actually one of my favorite definitions because I think it's a very holistic look at who gifted learners are. And just so you know, the underlining is my emphasis here of certain parts of the definition. And I'd like to highlight a few of those. And the first one is on this slide here, talking about that the experiences and awareness of gifted learners is really qualitatively different from the norm. And that's something when we are teaching and providing services to these students that we have to certainly keep in mind. There's a significant difference from the neurotypical student in our classrooms. Then the other piece to that is that the uniqueness of their particular ways of learning makes them vulnerable and requires modifications in parenting, teaching, and counseling. And it's primarily those last two that, with Churchill Charter, with our proposal, is what we are emphasizing, is that there need to be modifications in how we both teach these students as well as in how we provide support for them in the counseling realm. Here's a list of characteristics of gifted learners, not an exhaustive list. I'm sure it's one similar to a list you've seen. And I always like to emphasize when I talk about gifted students that you've met one gifted student, you've met one gifted student. They are unique, but they do have some characteristics in common. And this list is, as I said, not exhaustive, but it does share a number of characteristics that are common to the group of gifted learners. And as you can see, there are quite a few of them, and they can certainly be a challenge to meet successfully in the regular ed classroom. And also, I like to emphasize that It's important to keep in mind that gifted students are not just gifted for a specific time each day or week, but they are gifted 100% of the time. And this is something that is recognized and embraced at Churchill Charter. Now, in education, we often talk about differentiation. We usually focus on the content, process, and product. And I suggest that a much greater focus needs to be on differentiating the learning environment. As we know, gifted children are often more sensitive and emotionally aware than other children, and they can easily be hurt by unkind comments or rejection by others, and could be perceived in negative ways. At Churchill Charter, gifted students will have daily opportunities to interact with their intellectual peers, which will help eliminate some of these issues. They will spend more time with like-minded peers on a regular basis, helping them to develop confidence and necessary social skills, which will give them a sense of belonging and help develop their social as well as their emotional well-being. Now, sometimes gifted students avoid failure by not taking educational risks, and sometimes they question their giftedness, or they may get tired of always having to live up to the high expectations of adults in their lives or their own internal need for perfection. Now, this perfectionism can be a positive force for high achievement, but it can also be disabling. At Churchill Charter, students will consistently be given appropriately challenging tasks and content in a supportive learning environment so that they learn how to deal with failure and benefit from it. Too often, in my experience and in the research, gifted students do not develop the academic or emotional skills needed to overcome failure since they are rarely given that opportunity. Now, acceleration, and here is a quote from James Borland. It's from 1989, but it still holds true today. Acceleration is defined as academic intervention that moves students through an educational program at a rate faster or at an age that is younger than typical. It is about creating a better match between the readiness and motivation of a student and the level and pace of instruction. Academic acceleration can including grade skipping, early entrance to college, moving ahead in just one subject area, or other ways of moving a student ahead to more challenging and appropriate coursework. And acceleration is at the core of what will be provided at Churchill Charter. Now, on a personal note, this summer I presented at the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children, and while there I attended a panel session that included a variety of researchers from around the world. And they were asked which one intervention has the greatest impact on gifted learners. And every one of them mentioned that acceleration is the most effective intervention that we can provide to gifted learners. So the big question is, why have a school for the gifted? And there are a couple of areas that I'd like to highlight, and they all stem from Pennsylvania's Chapter 16 regulations, which I have listed there. And specifically, the regulations note that this requires specially designed programs or support services or both. And I'd like to highlight just a few of the innovative and impactful benefits that we anticipate the Churchill Charter School will have. First, there will not be just a single gifted program such as pull-out or push-in. Instead, flexible ability grouping, in addition to an enriched and accelerated and differentiated curriculum, will allow gifted learners to move quickly through basic material and to explore more complex material in depth, ensuring that students are able to benefit meaningfully from the rate, level, and the manner of instruction. And we recognize the existence of 2E, or students with twice exceptionalities. And these are students that have a gifted identification and then either a learning disability or some other exceptionality that might interfere with their success. And numerous studies have indicated that when working with students who are twice exceptional, we need to target their area of giftedness first. Then and only then can we really start to support and address their other exceptionality. And then number 3, a thematic approach. In learning, optimal results can be achieved if the content is organized around the key concepts or abstract ideas to be learned, rather than arranged in some other fashion. And you may be familiar with the TIMS, the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study. And those results indicate that here in the U.S., we continue to be outranked by countries that take a thematic and conceptual approach, especially in the sciences. And that's kind of the other area that I work in. I also teach in science education. And in science, we still tend to approach it with the mile-wide and the inch-deep curricula, leading to a somewhat shallow conceptual understanding. And at Churchill Charter School, students will have time to delve deeply into topics, focusing on both depth and complexity. And as I noted before, both acceleration and enrichment will be integral to the curriculum that we implement there. Number 5, students will be encouraged to pursue areas of interest and may be grouped across grade levels based on strengths and determined instructional levels. And Churchill Charter will not limit a student's educational opportunities based on his or her chronological age if that student exhibits abilities and interests that extend beyond what is typical for his or her assigned grade level. This is actually one of the things I'm most excited about, the opportunity for students to be able to move at their own individual pace, regardless of chronological age. Number 6, in the research in depth and complexity, this is one of the suggested strategies that districts use, and that is that the curriculum is written at the highest level and then differentiated as needed, which is in contrast to what we typically see across the 500 school districts here in Pennsylvania, which really targets the middle, supports struggling students, and then occasionally enriches above-level learners. And then number 7, Churchill Charter may result in the enrollment of children currently in homeschooling or private education settings. Now, not coincidentally, my dissertation research focused on families who homeschooled their gifted children for academic reasons. And this part of the homeschooling population represents the most rapidly growing percentage, those that are homeschooling for academic reasons. And every family that I interviewed chose to homeschool after trying both public and private schools. And if they would have had a school like Churchill Charter, my guess, based on my interactions with them, is that they would have chosen to then enroll their students in our school. Now, unfortunately, not all families have the resources to be able to homeschool or send their children to private schools. Both of those require resources. And we believe, and I believe, that public schools can and should address the needs of all intellectually and academically gifted children, regardless of socioeconomic status. It's something that I feel very strongly about. And then number 8, we will address the excellence gap. And there's a lot of research, great research that's been going on about this over the last decade or so. And this refers to the disparity in the percent of lower income versus higher income students who reach advanced levels of academic performance. And this gap appears in elementary school and continues, and in fact sometimes widens, as students move through middle, high school, college, and beyond. And there are some researchers, and I'm among them, believe the focus on minimum competency in education has come at a steep price. And although there has been general improvement in academic performance at many different population groups, achievement gaps at the highest levels of student achievement are unfortunately not shrinking. We're all familiar with the STEM pipeline, which is a good thing. We want to get more kids into that STEM pipeline. Unfortunately, there's another pipeline that the research continues to indicate exists, and this is a pipeline for leading to students that are at risk. And while it's commonly assumed that gifted children will make it on their own, in fact, these children are often at risk. And without an education that appropriately addresses their intellectual, academic, and social and emotional needs, these children are at risk for underachievement, dropping out. Some studies indicate 25% or more of high school dropouts test in the gifted range, which is significantly higher than their percentage in the general population. They're also at risk potentially for turning to drug abuse, to delinquency, potentially even committing suicide. So this is not only a tragic waste of individual potential, but I think it constitutes a real significant loss for the community and our nation as well. So by providing a public school option that truly addresses the intellectual, academic, and social and emotional needs of mentally gifted students on a full-time basis, Churchill Charter will make a profound difference in the lives of these children, their families, and their communities. And hopefully we will eliminate that pipeline that leads to students being at risk. So there are impacts on district schools, and there certainly is no denying that. So I was doing a little digging into the research recently. This is not my area of expertise, and it was interesting what I found. and that is that the potential negative impact on district schools tends to be the source of much of the resistance to the development of charter schools, and especially in Pennsylvania, and I recognize that. But several recent studies have indicated that the spillover or indirect effects are actually more positive than we might expect. And certainly while we need to be careful about drawing broad generalizations from these studies, I believe that these findings refute some of the common concerns expressed about the impact of charter schools on district schools. And you can see I have 6 different bullet points there that I pulled out of the research. And the last one is of particular interest to me in that a school like Churchill Charter potentially could attract families to the area, and some of them will send their students to Churchill Charter, but they also may send their students, their other children, to potentially to other district schools. So you might be wondering why I have an image here of somebody riding a turtle, and I want to just put just kind of a personal context on the data. And I've thrown a lot at you tonight, and I appreciate your willingness to listen. So on this final slide, I call this riding a turtle. So to close, I want to share a response from a student that I had many years ago, 15 years ago, as a middle school student in one of my gifted classes. I had asked her for feedback on how regular ed and how her gifted support classes were going. And in the district that I worked in at that time, gifted ed was called Excel. So this is what she said. She said, school is all right. I mean, we learn stuff and do cool activities and such, but it's like riding a turtle. We go a lot slower through the curriculum because we have to wait for all the average students to get the hang of stuff before we can go on. For a few days, when we're learning something new, I'm awake and really interested, and then concentrated on learning whatever it is. But for a bit after that, I'm kind of bored waiting for everyone else to get it before we can move on. If I could go my pace and some other students' paces, I bet we could learn twice as much as we do. I can't wait for AP courses. If school could be an all-day AP course, that would be the best thing in the world. And then she goes on to say, Excel is awesome. And I said earlier about an all-AP-like school, but Excel is better. Instead of learning a lot more about everything, both interesting and boring stuff, I get to learn more about what I really want to know. And I don't have to wait for average students to get the light bulb turned on above their head. I look forward to it all the time. And then she does note the one thing that's bad and sometimes good is missing classes. It takes a lot to make up classes, and because I also have sectionals, as many gifted kids do, I sometimes don't have enough study halls. I know there's no way of getting around missing classes, but it's kind of a drawback. And she says, also, Mrs. Schenk and Mr. Wolfgang are awesome. And she says, they treat us like the bright kids that we are. And they're not like, now class, let's learn about nouns. They make it alive, hands-on, and more oriented to us. It's the best. And she closes by saying, yippee! So, my dream is that students attending Churchill Charter School will be able to jump off the turtle and walk, jog, or run, each at his or her optimal pace. So I'm going to stop screen sharing there and open it up to any questions that you might have for me, any clarification on anything that I might have shared.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Mr. Graves?
Mr. Wolfgang, how many, population-wise, what percentage would you say the population is gifted?
Are you asking about like the broad population across the U.S. or what we would expect in a school system?
Either or both.
Okay. Yeah, and again, it's difficult to pin down. Estimates range typically from maybe 5 to 10% of the overall population, depending on how we assess that.
Okay, and are there how many gifted schools are you aware of within the country that's just related to a gifted curriculum?
Right, that are specifically either a charter or an admission specifically tailored towards gifted?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and that number I don't have off the top of my head. In the state, I can tell you the two that I'm most familiar with that we do have. We have one in the central part, actually not far from me, which is the Infinity Charter School, and I've actually done some teacher training there. And then there is a private school for the gifted near Philadelphia, which you can imagine has very high tuition, and that's the Grayson School, which has been in existence now for about 7 years.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay. Seeing none, I think that's all we have. Thank you, Dr. Wolfgang. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I understand that in addition to the presentations on the agenda, Dr. Woods also has a brief... I'm sorry? And a representative from the Heinz Fellowship, who will introduce herself, I believe, to make a presentation.
Evening.
Good evening.
I would like to introduce to you Mrs. Moy. She comes from the Center for Urban Education, which is through the University of Pittsburgh. Mrs. Moy has a program that I'll let her speak on because we had a couple conversations about it. It's funded by the Heinz Endowment, and essentially what the program would do would replace the climate specialists. As you know, we had to cut our climate specialists last year, and the students yearn for that, I don't want to call it attention, but they yearn for individuals that they can seek out when they're in distress, or even to share a positive moment. Today was a prime example. We had several students come into the building sobbing as soon as they cleared the metal detectors, and they were just looking for a face, a place, a hug, a kind word. So I will let Ms. Moy talk about the Heinz Endowment. I just want to say up front, it is zero cost to the district. It does not cost the taxpayers a penny. All we have to do is provide the space, which we have the space. The couple of the gentlemen who will be working in the program have actually spent time in the school already. Immediately, the first thing I do to test people out, I take them to the lunchroom. If you can survive a couple lunch periods, then you're welcome back. Going to the lunchroom, students ran up to them, staff ran up to them, hugged them, made a impact, and hopefully we can get this process complete so I can get them in there full time, and we can continue to make the gains and the progress that we have. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Moore.
Thank you. Good evening, Superintendent Harris and School Board. My name is Shaleka Moy, as Principal Woods just said. I am the Program Manager for the Heinz Fellowship. For those of you all who are not aware, we are now currently in the fifth iteration of the Heinz Fellowship. In its first 2 years, what it did was increase the pipeline of black male teachers in classrooms. At that time, it was under Duquesne University. It put black men in classrooms full-time with students to provide support, to get on-the-ground teacher education. Those gentlemen walked away with Masters of Arts in Teaching. Many of them, they came from a nationwide search, so we had folks from Louisiana, Chicago, New York, a variety of other places who came into Pittsburgh to Duquesne University to become educators. Many of them are still here or still there in Pittsburgh, teaching in Pittsburgh public schools. Probably, as a matter of fact, it was 2.5. Now I'm going into the third year. The program model switched a little bit, and it went from soliciting black males particularly to looking for individuals who were concerned about educational outcomes and wanted to support black children in a variety of ways. And so at this time, the fellowship lives in the Center for Urban Education at the University of Pittsburgh. This year, we have 15 Heinz Fellows, men, women, black, white, who were at the beginning of the year dispatched in 3 Pittsburgh public schools, which is where the Heinz Fellowship has been for, the 2.5 years that the University of Pittsburgh has had it. What we understand at the Heinz Endowment, at the Center for Urban Education, is that as many of our Pittsburgh area families continue to be pushed out of the city because they can't afford to live there anymore. They're ending up in suburban school districts such as Woodland Hills, Stowe Rocks, and other ones. And so what we know is that the need to support students and families in a variety of ways exists beyond the walls of Pittsburgh public schools. And so what we decided to do was take a look across the landscape, look at some schools that we thought might be a good fit for the services that we offer. And by good fit, we mean there is stability in building administration and or leadership. There's not an increased degree of volatility in a school building, because there are some schools that are too volatile and that we can't be effective in those schools because of the nature of things that are happening. And then there are some schools that are really, really, really great, and it's not as equitable to be inside those schools because children are being served well. So we look for those middle ground schools where folks can take the programs that we can help develop and create alongside of teachers and staff, and then maintain it after Heinz Fellows are there. Because while the program is really, really great and we've got great people in it, we don't know that Heinz Endowments will fund this thing forever, right? And so what we really want to do is be able to position the schools that we're in to be able to, again, take the programs, take the kinds of relationship building skills that we bring and help them develop and carry them on, to the next level. So that's a little bit about what Heinz Endowments is and what the Heinz Fellowship is. As Principal Wood said, this is completely funded by the Heinz Endowments, and so what you would end up with is 1.5, mostly full-time staff in the high school building, 1.5 because what we did was we had 8 fellows inside of one school building for the first half of the year, and then we kind of reassigned some folks and did some shifting. And so there are 2 gentlemen who, actually there were 3 of them who went to other schools, but the one gentleman would work between Woodland Hills and another school, so he becomes your 1.5. The fellows are inside of school buildings a minimum of 4 days a week. They're inside of schools Monday through Wednesday and on Fridays. Thursdays are reserved for professional development that they receive either on site at the Center for Urban Education or out in the community. When there aren't professional development obligations that they have to meet, they are welcome to come into the school. Just to give you an idea about how they're typically utilized in the school, we are currently in kindergarten through 12th grade settings. Some of the fellows actually come inside of the class, they're embedded inside of the classrooms with teachers, and so they look a little bit like a teacher's assistant in terms of being able to go alongside and help students with the academic piece of the work. We've got some fellows who are helping students organize around student government. We've got some fellows who assist with the athletic departments in some schools, doing like athlete mentoring. And we have another fellow who we have kind of identified to come and support the Woodland Hills School District, who does a college readiness / life readiness curriculum that he has developed. He actually has a nonprofit that he started when he was in a master's program at IUP that helps students persist through and actually, finish their college education at the undergraduate level. We understand that all children are not going to college, and that's fine. There are plenty of other things that you can do. So what his leadership curriculum does is, again, it prepares children for life after high school, whatever that might be for them. So I feel like I've given you like a really broad overview. Questions, comments, concerns? Yes, ma'am.
I think the concept's amazing and great. Definitely need it. But my first thought's not so much about money, it's about certifications. And that term that we use for climate control specialist, we had to be very careful with that language because that runs into that versus a behavior specialist. You have to be very specific with your degree.
So Heinz Fellows are critical mentors. We are not climate specialists. We are critical mentors. We are in schools primarily to support students, and by nature of supporting students, that means we support staff from the building principal to the security guard to the food service workers and families.
Okay, so it wouldn't be one specific, and then what we're asking for specifically the climate part of it is what you need.
Well, I threw the word climate specialist just so you can relate to the position and the duties. As she said, the title that she referred to is the title that the and fellowship uses. So I use that term just so you understand the duties. So what we're going to do is we're going to use them to support our restorative circles, or restorative justice. We're going to use them for our mentoring. We're going to use them for our tutoring program. And then also, she mentioned about our college career center does an excellent job of getting kids accepted into college. The issue and the challenges that we have is funding it. So we would like to piggyback with this gentleman and find out ways to get kids more funding so they can accept, not just accept, but enroll in sustaining college. Last year we had a young lady who got accepted in Kent State, and she had her other parent who was supposed to co-sign for a loan. The parent backed out of the co-sign for the loan. Now that young lady is at CCAC. Nothing wrong with CCAC, but when you're going on Facebook and you got all this Kent State gear, you expect to go to Kent State. So we want to make those opportunities less and provide more opportunities so we can get the kids what they need. And again, you've been talking about in the classrooms, no one will be placed in a classroom that they don't feel comfortable with. I would have the opportunity for the teacher and for the fellow to have a conversation, meet based off a need, and it would be kind of like how we do co-teaching, with the co-teaching and then the aid and then the fellow. So it's all voluntary, it's all at will, and it's all positive.
And then we'd have a staff of 8, perhaps?
No, 1.5.
1.5.
1.5. I'm sorry?
Can't get 8?
I was trying to get 4 in the beginning. But
yeah.
The part that she mentioned that we're not in the basement to where they don't feel like they can help us, and we're not in the penthouse where they feel like we don't need it. So I agree. We're in that transition where we're coming from one area, we're in that middle area, and we need the support to make that jump. I would love for them to come and give us an evaluation, say we're not needed here anymore. Not there yet. But I promise you, it will be utilized efficiently, it will be properly supervised. They already submitted all their clearances, their fingerprints, their FBI, their TB. We're just waiting to get their approval so I can get it going.
Mr. Wood.
And I'm sorry, if I could just add one other thing. Because this is the first time that Heinz Fellows have come out of Pittsburgh Public School District, this is, twofold for us. We get to support a district that wants the support, that could use the support, is ready to capitalize on it. But then, as far as the fellowship and the Center for Urban Education is concerned, we get some real on-the-ground free research ourselves in terms of seeing how this model works outside of PPS, where there's a very defined kind of way of doing things. So that is partly the reason why there's only 1.5. We thought there were going to be 4, but we had other schools who were ready to take advantage of this opportunity too. And so again, equity is at the heart of what we do. So at the end of the school year, there will be a formal evaluation that will go to the superintendent and Principal Woods. And then we'll bring all the decision makers back to the table and figure out, should the fellowship be renewed? Perhaps we need to hire more than 15 people. And if we're hiring more than 15 people, then again, how do we strategically place those folks in school buildings and then within districts where it makes the most sense for the fellows and for the districts that we want to partner with?
Dr. Woods, some might say that there's more of an immediate need for this to happen in an intermediate building than it is for high school.
So you want my response?
Well, you better give it now because you might not get a chance to respond later.
I work at the high school. I don't work at the intermediate. I don't have an idea what the intermediate needs are. I'm presenting the proposal at the high school level. I covered the high school. If you would like to have a conversation about the intermediate, that would be another time. So, like she said, we're kind of like in a pilot situation. If the pilot is successful, they go back, maybe we can expand and go to the other. But let us lead and show the way. I would also like to add that we do have 2 current high endowment people from the University of Duquesne working in our science department, and we do have an open communication relationship with the University of Pitt and the Q. So this is just another branch. So it's not like we're breaking new ground. These relationships already exist we're just tapping into another grant. And again, no cost to the taxpayer.
I have a question.
Yes, of course.
In terms of time span, are we just talking about the end of the school year?
Through the end of this school year. So the MOU was prepared for the start of the return from winter break. So right now it says from January 6th through May 30th or maybe mid-June. But so the fellowship runs the length of a school year, no matter what school we're in. But because this transition was made mid-year for you all, it would run through the end of this current 2019-2020 school year.
So Dr. Woods, you talked about wanting to have folks in the building, kids felt comfortable hugging or, being able to go to in terms of emergencies or stress or that sort of thing. Do you have any concern about this really being a pretty clipped window and being able to develop those relationships and sustain them?
I believe, again, the gentlemen that I have in the building, they already have relationships established. The gentleman that Mr. Darby, who I had today, is from the area. He knows the kids from working on the Little League organizations. He's been a part of the community in other aspects. Mm-hmm. So we're just fortunate that of the fellows, we have two individuals that's, that is familiar with our area, our district, our needs. And again, I do understand it's only for the rest of the year, but if I have a bad couple weeks, you guys might not ask me to come back next year. So I'm just worried about this year. I'm worried about next year when I get there. So I take what I got to get to where I need to be, and we'll start over next year. But I definitely believe it's a no-brainer.
And that's also a valid concern, right? The fellowship works that it's 1 year at a time. We have, of the 14 fellows, I believe 6 who have been there all 3 years that it's been at the Center for Urban Education. There are another 3 fellows who have been there for now going into their 2nd year. And so the possibility always exists that, number one, the program will not be funded again, right? And so what we are always very clear about as Hines Fellows going into a school and starting relationships with children who we know experience loss of relationships, loss of significant people in their life far too often. We're very upfront. We're very honest about the fact that this is a 1-year program. We want to be back. We hope we will be back. But part of the work of the Hines Fellowship Critical Mentoring platform is that we are helping children develop the capacity for resilience, the capacity to cope beyond having somebody there, at every moment for every emergency. And so while it can be problematic to have people come in, and that's on both sides, because we love the children we work with, right? And so it's hard on both sides, but it is kind of the nature of the program.
But the intent is to transfer this skill set to our staff to maintain that high level of
staff and students. Because in the one-to-one, in the one-on-one critical mentoring piece, it's really about helping children develop that capacity also. So again, we support students first, but by way of supporting students, that means we're also supporting staff and the people who support them, because we need everybody well for this work.
So you mentioned, I can't remember the exact words you mentioned now. Anyway, so we know that the fellows may operate in a variety of capacities across school districts.
Correct. And even within buildings.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But you said something about the fellows having an impact on students' lives in a way that would sustain itself. So do fellows receive, do they all operate under the same sort of training, or is there a curriculum that fellows experience?
Yes.
Okay. And so when they interact with students, they're operating from that place.
Correct.
So that part is consistent across.
That is consistent. So what happens is that when the fellows are being prepared for the upcoming school year, we spend 6 weeks of the summer, 5 days a week, immersed in urban education, critical mentoring. It's at the University of Pittsburgh, and so Their School of Education is dope. I'm going to say it. I'm a doctoral student there myself. And so, yes, we are all very well prepared, or at least given access to, right, some of the tenets, some of the theories. We have scholars come in literally from across the country who come in and spend days at a time with us on all of the tenets of mentoring of urban education. And then, if you may recall, on Thursdays, we continue to receive professional development so that the training looks the same, but because we're all different, you know what I mean? And we're all inside of very different classrooms, even within the same building. How that gets applied certainly looks different in the application of it. Did that answer your question?
Could you quickly break down your term urban education?
So what do you mean when you say break that down?
Because we always hear a lot of buzzwords, right? So, you know, that's kind of a new one for me. Implicit bias, urban education, adultification. So it seems like a broad term. Is it a specific target other than, you know,
especially as we are not an urban district technically.
Right.
You are not. And so you're right. In a lot of ways, it's a very broad catch-all, but typically, particularly within the Center for Urban Education and the Pitt School of Ed, when we think about urban school districts, we think about a school district that is serving a high population of students who are experiencing urbanized issues, low income, low employment rates, housing instability. Many times that is going to include race issues, you know, black children, black and brown children. In Pittsburgh, we don't really have brown children. We have black children and we have white children. But the term urban is used to encompass all of those characteristics.
Any trauma-based training?
Absolutely. We get lots of that. We work directly with the Center for Victims of Violence. And then we've got other professionals who come in and a gentleman named Raymond Logan. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with him. Dr. Raymond Logan. He does a lot of work around trauma awareness and trauma informed. I myself am a public health practitioner, and so I do workshops around trauma informed responses for educators. So yeah, we are absolutely aware of and ready to respond appropriately.
And another thing that you mentioned is that originally they started in the city of Pittsburgh, right? So then individuals from the city of Pittsburgh are going out to the suburbs. We experience a lot of transient population. So we got a lot of these children who are coming from those areas. So again, to equip the students to capacity, equip the staff to capacity, I'm learning myself every day, even being in the district. So I welcome the opportunity to grow and learn from the University of Pitt, Center for Urban Education, and as many tools as we can get to service our students. But like you said, that was a good question about urban. But like I think we got urban issues.
You're urban adjacent. You definitely have urban issues. You're urban adjacent, but you are not an urban school district, and that's okay. And another good point is that part of the MOU, which is the Memorandum of Understanding, is that we have invited you all to all of the professional development that Q offers. And while it is not required, I personally strongly encourage you all to attend the Lunch and Learns, the Q Talks, and all of the amazing things that are happening that prepare educators who are dealing with urban issues, whether you're adjacent or in it, you know what I mean, to be prepared. So
that's the bonus in itself because I paid to go. I didn't even realize.
Yes, you better read. I need you all to read that MOU. Yes, please, and thank you.
That's great. Any more questions?
Other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Dorsey says hello.
Tell her we said hello as well. Send her our best.
We sent MOU to Mr. Vogel to review. He gave us some feedback on what to correct.
Okay.
So we plan to correct that and have it resubmitted to the board.
Okay.
To review for next week.
Okay, great. So we'll look for that as an agenda item next week.
And I can also send electronic copies of the cohort model.
Great.
The program description.
That would be super.
Yeah.
If we can get that in addition to for the weekend, that would be super. So we have it to review. Okay. Thank Thank you very much.
Thank
Much
you. You
appreciated.
guys have a great night.
Thank you. Okay. That concludes the presentations. Moves us to registered speakers. Mr. Gigliotti, I see one.
That's all I see.
Okay.
Kevin Collins.
Mr. Collins, please come forward. Registered speakers have 2 minutes to speak. Please give your name and address of residence at the top of your remarks. You, again, have 2 minutes, and any questions posed will be addressed after the meeting concludes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kevin Collins. I have resided with my wife at 307 Homer Drive in Churchill since 1986. I have 2 grown children. I currently am a member of the Churchill Borough Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the Churchill Charter School. First of all, I want to voice my appreciation for the initiatives that the Woodland Hills School Board has put forth in improving the performance of our school system. The effort and successes are real and substantial. However, I truly believe that the origination of the Churchill Charter School will work hand in hand with the board's efforts and greatly enhance the outcomes for years to come. The purpose of the Churchill Charter School is to work along with the board to improve the education of our young students. I find it most appealing that a major component of the charter school is the requirement of parental involvement in the details of educating their children. The origination of the charter school will indicate to the public that the board is willing to think kind of outside the box and listen to new ideas that will improve the results and the reputation of the Woodland Hills School District. Again, thank you for the time and opportunity.
Thank you very much. That will move us to Board Matters. Mr. Harris.
Okay, Board Matters 2.1. We seek approval of the first and final reading of revised policy 011, Principles for Governance and Leadership. Questions?
I'll just say that we're going to do, my preference is to do this as a first and final because it is relatively straightforward and I think just a good guide for us as board members. So if anyone has questions about that, this was discussed at recent, we have not updated this since 2006 and PSBA updates it more regularly than that, so it is recommended that we do that at this time. So, okay, any other questions or comments on that? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, 2.2.
2.2, first reading of revised policy 006, meetings.
This will be a first, but the first of 3 questions at this point. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 2.3.
2.3, we seek approval of the Churchill Charter School application. Questions?
Okay, questions on that? Again, we'll have a adjudication for review from the solicitor before next week's meeting for everyone to take a look at. Okay. Section 3, curriculum.
Curriculum 3.1, we seek approval to surplus and dispose of outdated curriculum. See attached.
Questions on that? Okay. Seeing none, Section 6, personnel.
Personnel 6.1, Section B, authorization for retirement resignation. Section C, authorization to hire professional staff. Section D, authorization to hire non-professional staff. Section G, authorization for miscellaneous.
Questions on this would likely necessitate executive session. Any questions regarding personnel? Okay. Seeing none, Section 10, buildings and grounds.
10.1, we seek approval of amendment number 1 to Reynolds Consulting Engineers, Inc., Dixon School Consultant Services Agreement totaling $16,000 from Capital Project Fund 39.
Questions on that? Okay. Seeing none, 10.2.
10.2, we seek approval of amendment number 2 to the Reynolds Construction LLC Dixon School Construction Management Agreement totaling $67,000 from Capital Project Fund 39. Questions?
Questions? Okay. Seeing none, 10.3.
10.3, we seek approval of amendment number 6 to the Reynolds Energy Service, Inc. Giza Agreement totaling $31,677 for the Dixon School from Capital Project Fund 39.
Questions? Seeing none, 10.4.
10.4, we seek approval of amendment number 3 to the Reynolds Construction LLC High School Construction Manager Agreement totaling $127,094 from Capital Project Fund 39.
Questions? Seeing none, 10.5.
10.5, we seek approval of outside organizations to utilize district facilities.
Any questions on the outside use? It's a relatively short list this month. Okay. Seeing none, 10.6.
10.6, we seek approval of Automated Logic to a 2-year contracting service agreement for Dixon and High School, year 1 price at $19,500 and year 2 price at $20,085 from Funds 10.
Questions? Okay. That moves us to Section 13, School Finance.
13.1, we seek ratification of the bill list for invoices paid after the December 4, 2019 legislative meeting.
Questions? Seeing none. 13.2.
13.2, we seek approval of the January 2020 bill list.
Questions? Seeing none. 13.3.
13.3, we seek the acceptance of the November and December 2019 fund financial reports and student activity reports for informational purposes.
Questions? Okay. Seeing none. 13.4.
13.4, we seek approval of the investment reports for November and December 2019.
Questions? Okay. Seeing none. 13.5.
13.5, we seek approval of the budgetary transfers for January 2020.
Questions? Okay. Seeing none. 13.6.
13.6, we seek ratification of opening a new bank account with PLGIT, Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust, for the capitalized interest portion of Go Bond Series of 2020 proceeds.
Questions? Seeing none. 13.7.
13.7, we seek approval to adopt the Act 1 Index Resolution 542-20 for the 2020-2021 budget.
Questions on that? Mr. Gigliotti, for edification purposes, would you just explain what that Act 1 Index Resolution does?
Sure. What the Act 1 Index Resolution does for us and all school districts in Pennsylvania is allows us to basically proceed with the normal budget process. We won't be adopting a preliminary budget now in anticipation of any referendum exceptions or referendums. The budget will, you actually are agreeing to not exceed the index. So you have from 0 to the index to deal with, just like you would in any other budget year. So, but it allows us to follow in May we'll present a preliminary budget for adoption. In June we'll adopt the final budget.
Okay. So just so that we're clear, this does not, we're not increasing taxes.
We're not increasing taxes. We're not committing ourselves to anything except the normal budget process.
Leaves us the option of increasing taxes should we decide to do that in June. That does not, however.
And it does limit the increase.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions on that? Okay. Seeing none. Is there any old business? New business? Okay. There is in our agenda a brief update on the Finance Committee meeting that was held in November, at which we had a conversation with representatives from the Italian American Club in Wilkins about a delinquent tax issue, and initial budget numbers were presented for review and discussion at that time. Just a reminder that we will resume committee meetings this month on the 21st and 22nd at 5 p.m. here in this building, and the website lists the committees that meet each night. Does anyone else have reports? Okay. I have a brief update from Sunrise School, where I'm on the board for the building. There was a productive meeting before the holiday break in early December regarding the facility, the needs for the facility at that school. That we are part owners of that school and are responsible for the upkeep of the facility. So there may be continuing conversations about whether there needs to be some sort of contribution made in order to make sure that that school is, structurally sufficient. So I'll bring more of an update as the conversations continue. Very preliminary conversations at this point. Nothing was decided except that there needs to be more conversation. So that's sort of where we are, but I do want to put it on everybody's radar. that there are some needs at that facility for which we bear responsibility.
Is it a roof?
No, well, there's a roof issue, but the roof issue is going to be is a warranty situation. But yeah, we talk about roofs there too.
What's the roof?
Sunrise School in Monroeville.
Oh, okay.
We're part of the jointure out there, as we are, Forbes and other places. So, okay. So I'm happy to discuss that with anybody who has additional questions as we go forward. So, okay. Any other reports? Okay. That moves us to public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board at this time? Good evening, sir. Reminder that you also are given 2 minutes. Please give your name and address before addressing the board.
I'll be very brief. David Reel, 325 Lex Lane, Turtle Creek, 15145. I just want to, as a representative of Churchill Charter, thank you very much for allowing us to have a special presentation this evening, and thank you for letting him go over the time allotted. He was a little over the 10 minutes, so I appreciate that. Appreciate your consideration over the next week before the vote next week. I know some of you are new to the board. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for doing what you do. It's a tough job. We appreciate your consideration and look forward to discussing it with you further next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to address the board? Okay. Seeing none.
Am I reading?
Go for it.
Okay. 19.1, we seek permission to end the January 8, 2020 agenda setting meeting.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. See you all next week.
We're going to change that word.
Yeah, no, depending on what you can't say.
No word I can't say.